Welcome to another episode of the amazing Beer Parlour. And now you had Ramsdale, who made a silly mistake that nearly cost Arsenal a tabletop winning match. And you're wondering, was Arteta right?
But
Was
as a
your
keeper, if there's a lot of noise around you, most likely you are not doing a good job.
yeah
The keeper needs to work in silence. The
yeah
best work in silence. Another point Chelsea fans have been making is that this is match habits. Every time within a period from March to about April, May,
you
or
pick up?
he'll pick amazing run of form, like scoring every game. I remember last
And it seems like we've been tunnel visioned into always judging a forward's play based on how many goals he scores. And so I just think generally football fans should start understanding the expertise of certain technical players and know what metrics to judge them by, and stop judging a playmaker by his ball retention. He is not Rodri to be dictating the pace of play.
I just want to start right off the bat with the most controversial thing. I don't think it was a penalty. Look,
Yeah.
Liverpool fans, maybe those on social media, I don't know, but Liverpool fans who live here don't care if they win the title or not. They don't care. They don't care about the title. They don't care about winning the title. There's no pressure or demand on club to win any title. It could be
And then Liverpool goes on the break. All of a sudden, you guys come back for extra time, and Chelsea started sitting in deep. It was so stark a difference. I was unsure what to call you guys. And so when Gary Neville said you guys are billion-dollar bottle jobs, it was like facts. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the amazing Beer Parlour. So here with me, as usual, is Erasmus. Um, I just want us to kickstart this with your feeling about the first episode that we published. Uh, and I say this, I'm able to say the Beer Parlour at the beginning of this episode because, like, as you know, it we just came up with the name in the middle of the first recording, and then we decided to stick with it. So, what has been the reaction from your end so far? How do you feel about the performance of the episode, and what's your expectation for this one?
It's amazing. It's amazing. I love it. I love the shaft. I love the color. I like the fact that we came up with the name right within the session, and I think it's a name that's resonated with a lot of people. Some people actually think it's the beer parlor, and maybe we discuss the shaft and narrate. Um, I think it's a sports podcast. I mean, it's still a debate podcast, but I think
Yeah,
I like the fact that like debate minds are able to contribute to
yeah.
sports or things that we love and enjoy. And both of us love and enjoy this, so always happy to have those conversations and have inputs from people. But yeah, phenomenal.
Yeah, for me generally, I think looking at sports, some of us see it like as debaters, we're able to put a much more analytical lens on it to try and have a deeper dive beyond the surface levels into the rationale behind some things, much more accurate projections here and there. And that makes it an interesting conversation, which is also fun for a lot of people within the space. And so, yeah, also we get to have disagreements, we get to have conversations around our thoughts and opinions, which is also a good expression of what debate has taught us in any way. I think a lot more people use their debate skills for sporting disagreements than than a lot of things in their lives. So yeah, I really love the episode. I think it's one of our best performing episodes so far. And I have very, very good hopes for this one. Also, the reception we got was really, really amazing. Lots of people really enjoyed that episode. So today we'll just have we've had a very seismic weekend in the English Premier League. We've had Arsenal, Brentford. We've had the top of the table clash between Liverpool and City. We've had for the first weekend in I think 8 weeks or so where the league leaders have changed and Arsenal is now on top of the league. So this episode is mainly to dive deep into the things surrounding the happenings of this weekend, and also talk a little bit more about some strange formations we saw with United, Ole's interview, and then finally Chelsea Pochettino discussions around managerial terms. So yeah, this is a really, really packed, loaded episode that would shift from various interesting topics to the other. So stick with us, and you definitely enjoy. First, Arsenal beat Brentford by 2-1. Eventually, they are top of the table. But I think one thing that stands out, which I want to ask you about, is Arteta's decision to bring in David Raya, even though he had Aaron Ramsdale, who did so well last season and was touted as probably one of the best keepers in the EPL last season. And it was very strange at the start of the season when Arteta decided to bring Raya on loan, and then all of a sudden Raya became his first choice. There was a whole lot of conversation about how Ramsdale would feel about the goalkeeping situations, and Raya was also making some very silly errors at the beginning of the season, which even made the lens on the analysis much bigger because now people were saying Arteta made the wrong call and all that. It seems to be paying off for him because obviously his team has been solid, and Raya, I think up until last weekend, had the most clean sheets in the season in the league. And now you had Ramsdale, who made a silly mistake that nearly cost Arsenal a tabletop winning match. And you are wondering, was Arteta right? What's your assessment of it? And do you think Ramsdale is really not up to par with Raya, such that Arteta's decision is probably the most sensible one to go with?
Yeah, I mean, like this whole goalkeeper situation, it's it's a big conversation to have, and it could almost like fill up the episode. But
Yeah,
I think one thing we need to recognize is that Arsenal wants to challenge for the league this year.
yeah,
I don't think last year they were trying to challenge for it at the start of the season. It was the first time that we had seen them because they were going for top four, and before they realized they were top of the table, and they were like, you know what, let's go for the league. And we've seen the gap or the standard that Man City has set within the league. You need to be perfect because these
yeah,
guys go 16 games, 18 games, 20 games uh, winning streak,
yeah,
close to the end of the season just to win the title. So you need to be perfect to beat the
yeah,
City team, which means that you cannot allow for any weakness. And the
yeah,
unfortunate situation for David Ramsdale is that when he was brought in, before he was brought in, Arteta wanted Raya. He wanted a goalkeeper who could play out
yeah,
from the back, who plays kind of football. But Raya was not available
yeah,
due to his contract situation at Brentford. So he had to bring in Ramsdale, and it was sort of like, yeah, this is a good goalkeeper, second
yeah,
choice. Then he overperformed. Overperformed. So now you stick with him or you still go with your first choice. And I think he didn't make a good audition for himself towards the end of the season when he
yeah,
committed a few blunders, which saw them sitting 5 points adrift of the top, and he's still getting to bottle it. Which
yeah,
I think, to be fair, I think Arsenal is a bottling company, so Raya was Ramsdale was just a cog in the whole bottling machine. Plus, let's be very honest, some of uh, the praise we are giving to Raya needs to go
yeah,
to the Arsenal defense
yeah,
because last
Saliba,
season Saliba went out injured.
yeah,
I think they lost Zinchenko, but this
yeah,
season, like Kevo has stepped up. Zinchenko is back. Ben White is finally playing like a footballer, and they just seem to be all around very very solid. So it's an
yeah,
unfortunate situation, but I think it's something that they need to do because like Raya is more elite if we're being honest. Because before, and it's also the mentality, right? That's also another thing I wanted to point out because Raya's
yeah,
mentality is quite top for a player who was playing at Brentford.
yeah,
Not to mean any disrespect, but Ramsdale is someone who had been involved in a lot of relegation battles, uh, relegation threatening teams even before getting here. You could
yeah,
see the difference in quality. So it's about heart or head, and I think Ateta went with his head over here. But it's unfortunate that he made that error at the weekend because I don't think we are
yeah.
seeing him in the league again.
Yeah, to be very honest, I think that was a really bold move from Arteta because usually managers find themselves in these situations a lot where you probably want a player, you don't get him, you get someone for the interim, and then they prove to probably you were wrong about your initial assessment. Maybe they are up for it. And so managers would tend to say, you know what, let me stick with this person rather than maybe go for the one I initially wanted who may not even work out. And especially at the start when mistakes were happening with Raya and everybody kept on putting in magnifying lenses on the issues, with goalkeeping and all that. I even think maybe Onana saved Raya a lot of backlash because Onana was worse.
Yeah,
Onana, Onana was worse.
a lovely paycheck. I think he crossed the 60 mark, so we'll be preparing his pension package for him.
Onana was worse. But you will talk about United in a bit. But then you look at um, eventually settling with Raya and his performances has been good. And then Ramsdale is given the opportunity because Raya cannot play against Brentford. And this single opportunity where you need to make a statement, you make this resounding error. And I mean, the team stood with him, but if and I have a feeling it's because probably they won, and so it's easier for them emotionally to do that. But if they had lost or if they have drawn, knowing very well eventually that City and Liverpool drew, and this could have been the chance where they go top of the league, it would have been a big issue for Ramsdale. And so for me, like you, I don't think he gets to make the squad if Raya
Mm.
is fit and Raya is
I mean, when you think about it, if even if you've lost your place, you know there are two games in the league where you are
yeah,
sure to, and
yeah.
this is
Those are
pressure.
yeah, exactly.
And I can imagine that the pressure that comes in that moment is extraordinary. But
Yeah,
that's where you need to prove that you are tough. And like I mean, we'll talk about United and maybe we'll talk about Nana because like there's a bit of resurgence maybe in another episode. But
yeah,
as a keeper, if there's a lot of noise around you, most likely you are not doing a good job.
yeah,
The keeper needs to work in silence. The best
yeah,
keepers work in silence. But so
yeah.
that's all I'll say.
I mean, for me as well, I'm looking at Ramsdale's situation, and I'm like, is it also that because we tend to see this a lot with players who are not made to play a lot, that they probably end up going out of form, right? It's not like, let's say, an outfield player who gets substitution minutes. Goalkeepers never get substitution minutes, which is the issue with Ramsdale. And so eventually, we don't expect him to all of a sudden start a match and be 100% fit and sharp as he would be. Similar to when Raya came, probably this is his beginning of the season Raya mistakes, right? If Ramsdale was playing right from the start, maybe he would make these couple of mistakes at the beginning of the season, and then he would become sharp. He would pick up the pace. He would be very, very aggressive in his goal. And so I tend to think whether or not it is fair on such players who are sat out for long to be blamed or to be criticized when they are brought in and they don't seem to be as much fit as we expect them to be.
No, like
And
football.
there's a similar case for, just give me a second, there's a similar case for Calvin Phillips when he was at City, where people used to always say, anytime Pep has given him the opportunity, he hasn't proven himself. And I'm like, look, man sits on the bench for almost decades and is made to play one match, maybe the entire season, and you expect him to all of a sudden be fit and be playing like Rodri would play. Obviously, that's impossible. So I don't know whether that's a fair judgment on the character of players who end up within that situation.
Look, football is a very very cruel sport, and just like with any space where there's competition, you have
Yeah,
to deliver. We're put in unique circumstances, and everyone sort of understands that you've not been playing, so we expect a bit of rust and everything. But you need to deliver. That's the thing I was saying in the beginning. You need to be perfect, and if you have a player who cannot handle this kind of situation because look at Kevin Kelleher for Liverpool.
yeah,
Alex went out injured and he's been amazing. In fact,
yeah,
it's looked like he's
yeah.
you notice the
You
difference.
don't
Like
feel the absence of Allison because he's
yes,
doing an
so
amazing job.
part of what it means to be a very good squad player at some of these big clubs, and there's a reason why even they pay their squad players more. Chelsea pays
Yeah,
the squad players more than players who play full time in Everton or West Ham. So it tells you that there are standards that need to be adhered to, and there's certainly no excuse for that. Of course, no one expects you to be of the same quality as the players on the pitch, but there's a
yeah.
reason why you are paid to be a squad player in that instance. When you get there, you need to deliver, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, to be very honest, I genuinely don't think, even if they are paid to be squad players, there are some things that are natural. Like assuming a debate company picks you and decides to make you debate for them, and you are sat on the bench for a very long time, even if you are paid, bro. Like,
I'll send you. I mean, we need to move on from this, but I'll send you to recent one. We sat out for so long since November, like even before
yeah,
November, we sat out for so long. We went to African Nations League. We were in the
yeah,
final. We lost the final, and we were still very, very hurt. We sat out for so long, and we went out to IBA
yeah.
Grand Prix, and we won the tournament. Our first speeches, we couldn't even string
Yeah,
sentences
so that
together.
was Ramsdale's first speech.
Yeah,
It
no,
just
and
led to,
at the end of the
unfortunately.
day, it was a tournament, and we turned up and we still won. We still won in that room. So for
Yeah,
me,
well, that's fair.
you just need to deliver.
Yeah, moving on from Ramsdale, there are two players who were influential in that win against Brentford. Obviously, Declan Rice is proven to meet up to the price tag, and Kai Havertz scoring the winning goal. First, let's start with Kai Havertz because you guys sold him. Chelsea, he wasn't delivering for you guys. You sold
Mhm.
him to Arsenal. Arsenal is not playing with a clear out and out striker now, and Kai Havertz seems to be one of the people who have stepped up in recent games, delivering goals and assists for them and putting in very, very impressive performances. What's your take on his impact on this current Arsenal team and the form that they are on?
Look, Kai Havertz is my player. Like a lot of people don't know this, but I personally love the guy. Like
Yeah,
I love him to bits, right? But
yeah,
he is a kind of player who functions in a defined structure, in a structure that works. When things are going well for the team, Kai Havertz will do so well, and it was seen when he was brought in into was
yeah,
it
yeah,
Lampard's team when we bought him straight away from Leverkusen, and it seems we were all over the pitch. Havertz was lost. Merely
yeah,
Tuchel brought in some stability.
yeah.
Havertz started thriving.
He
In
was
the
thriving.
Germany team, remember he was doing so well, and then when Germany started having their crisis, Havertz was just like dysfunctional. When the
Yeah,
system works, Havertz is unplayable. He's one of the most talented players that I know, and he's clutch because he's the kind of player who puts his head down and just works very, very hard. He's a very, very, very hard worker. I don't know how he got the tag of being very lazy, but he's a very, very hard worker. But I also think
yeah,
he has a ceiling. Like he's a generational talent in my opinion, but he has a
yeah,
ceiling. Because what he does is different from every other player.
yeah,
Like he's a player who finds space. So I mean, Thomas Muller was used in a way that he was like top goal
yeah, yeah,
scorer,
yeah,
but the way he plays the game, he's not required to like give you
yeah.
GNA all
Go.
of the time.
Yeah,
So I think that was one of his problems at Chelsea due to the instability. There was no way he could do. But another point Chelsea fans have been making is that this is March Havertz. Every time within a period from March to about April, May,
he'll
or
pick out.
he'll pick amazing run of form, like score in every game. I remember last season or last 2 seasons, like against Newcastle, then he scored this tapper. God, it
Yeah,
was amazing. But before that, you'll be
yeah,
starting one. So I get that Arsenal fans are excited and they want to rub it in Chelsea fans' faces, but they were crying at the beginning of the season, and they need to remember that they don't watch Chelsea games, and that's how come I'm convinced that people don't watch Chelsea games because Havertz
yeah,
plays incredible. All these things that they're saying, they should watch the games where Havertz played for Tuchel. He was
yeah,
incredible in terms of his ball carrying, in terms of his ability to utilize the space and create space for his teammates. And he's virtually on the same goal tally in a proper team that is challenging for the title. And they say 65 million was good money, given that we paid, I think, 79 or 80 for him, and he scored a Champions League winning goal for us. And he's probably
yeah.
the only people who have a Champions League medal in that team are Chelsea players. So they should put some respect on their names, and we'll use their money
Hey,
wise.
what has Arsenal done to you? Because yes, first you started with Arsenal, a bottling company, and and Ramsdale is just corking the bottle line, and now you literally
Waiting.
picked Havertz scoring streak and you rubbed it in their face. But I mean, for me, those kinds of players tend to be harshly judged sometimes. And they are not players who they are offensive players, but they are not goal scoring machines. And their importance to the team is usually during off the ball movements, in what do you call it? Pressing styles, applying pressure and working hard and all that. And it seems like we've been tunnel visioned into always judging a forward's play based on how many goals he scores, right? And this comes down to players like Gabriel Jesus. I don't know why Gabriel Jesus doesn't score that many goals in a season. But when he's playing, you would see his influence on the team. You would see his playmaking, his link up play, his pressing, his working hard. And sometimes when teams are not scoring goals, I don't think these players should be the ones we blame. Sure, he would miss chances, but that's the thing. He's not a prolific goal scorer. You don't expect him to tap in and score every single chance like Erling Haaland would do or like Victor Osimhen would do. And so if he misses the chances, that's not his strength, right? It's like recently a conversation that has been happening about, Bruno Fernandez doesn't keep the ball. He loses the ball too much. He's a playmaker. Playmakers are easily dispossessed. They are risk takers. They always want to ping the ball one way or another, try risky things. And it's similar to why De Bruyne was taken off by Pep and De Bruyne wasn't happy. But Pep's defense, he wanted to control the ball, and De Bruyne is not the person who controls the ball for him.
Yeah.
And so I just think generally football fans should start understanding the expertise of certain technical players and know what metrics you judge them by, and stop judging a playmaker by his ball retention. He is not Rodri to be dictating the pace of play. Um, but finally, let's talk about Arsenal's position on the table now. I mean, currently they are topping the table. They have one key match, which I think will probably be much more season defining, which is their trip to the Etihad to go and play Man City. And if they win that clash, they are probably convincingly done with City. City, I mean, but unless they mess up somewhere, which is currently unlikely given the run of form, because currently Arsenal has scored more goals in 2024 alone than United has scored the entire season. That's that's first of all how incredible Arsenal have been, and secondly, that's how terrible United have been. And so I think they're on a very, very interesting run, and I don't know whether you think they can go to the Etihad and do it.
No.
Wow. Wow. This is
The
a
answer
bold call.
No, the answer is simple. No. Like we all saw the like tradition. Like you need to understand that the way the Arsenal and City clash has been, it's like yeah, these are challenges. You see how Liverpool goes toe to toe with City now. It's quite clear
Yeah,
you can't call it. So Arsenal is now gaining that trajectory, and I just don't think they are ready enough. We saw the game they had at the Emirates. It came off
yeah,
a deflected shot. I think now they've gotten better at just being able to contain City. But I just
yeah,
think Pep is brilliant. Like Pep is brilliant, and the only way I see them beating City is I've realized that the Man City team is beginning to struggle a bit with some of the top six sides, mostly
yeah,
because it looks like the more they got better at breaking down some of these smaller sides, they've got a bit worse at playing because they used to be very good at beating
yeah,
the big teams, and then like they had these boogie teams from Sheffield, things like that, and they got better at it, and it looks like they are declining a bit here.
yeah,
And it's because the way they play now, they're so focused on the attacking play. Um, they don't like it when a team takes the game to them. So we saw the game with Chelsea at the Etihad, where
yeah,
Gallagher was all over Rodri. We saw
yeah.
yesterday when what's his name?
Endo.
Endo and McAllister were all over Rodri, just not giving him the room to dictate the pace of the game. And it's quite clear that when Haaland is playing higher up the pitch, he's way
Yeah,
less effective than in the box. So your best bet is to push them back. And they tend to push back a bit when they realize that you can find the attacking transitions.
yeah,
And once you
yeah,
can find the spaces to play in between them, you know you punish them. And I think Arsenal has the capacity to do that. But
yeah.
it's Etihad and
For me,
it's
I have,
Pep. He'll
I
be
have
fine.
one question for you though. Like, at what point should City start getting scared of Arsenal because I think, granted, from last season's performance, I don't think Arsenal deserved that fear factor from any of the top teams, and maybe United. But if you look at, there's a team that eventually comes of age, and sometimes it elopes you when a team comes of age, and the time you grasp that they've come of age, you would have already suffered the consequences, right? City, Liverpool probably feel the two of them are the most threatening. But maybe Arsenal has come of age and this is the season to prove it. But we can't tell because we don't have any prior records to back that. And that's one of the most risky situations any opponent can find themselves in. When the person you are competing against is better than they were, they've come of age, they are genuine contenders, but you can't prove whether or not they are. And so, at what point should City start being scared of Arsenal? And at what point should we say, sure, Arsenal is a threat, let's start paying more attention to them?
Yeah, like, I think Arsenal is a threat now. Like, I'm a Chelsea fan, but I know if we play, like, we are not winning because
Yeah,
like Arsenal is a well coached team. I think
yeah,
that's what it is. Like, some of the players they have would not do well when put in
yeah,
other
yeah, yeah,
teams. Ateta has a way of coaching players that gets all of them overperforming. For God's sake, Ben White is playing as a right back and he's like balling
for God's sake.
eyes out. So
Yeah,
I think there's a point at which these players tend to gain some maturity, and of course they've gained the maturity, start winning trophies, and we're going to
yeah,
see that. But we saw them bottle it in the FA Cup. We saw them bottle it in the Carling Cup. I think
yeah,
they need to start getting out of their heads, and maybe because right now most of Arsenal's attacking prowess comes from them playing that sort of like 2-3-5 formation where they overload the boxes. You
yeah.
That's what they did against City like last season, and City won 4-1 because City just found
Yeah,
ways in their
you just
players to
transition and they're done.
in against them and find the pockets of spaces beside the center backs, and then they were going through. Obviously now it's a bit harder because like City is struggling, but you can't play that way against. You need to have a level of defensive solidity and be
Yeah.
available to be very very explosive on the counter attack. If Jesus plays, I think they stand a very good chance. If Havertz plays, it tends to slow down counter attacks a bit. But I mean, he scored the winning goal against City in the Champions League final, so I'm sure he's the one who needs.
Really let people's fans rest. But I mean, for me, one thing that's reassuring for us now for me is that first of all, they've done something that Pep used to do over the seasons when he's won titles, picking his team at the right time. And this second half of the season is where Arsenal has peaked. Just imagine they are not playing with an out and out striker, but they have more goals than the top three, right? They are leading the goal difference tally, which shows you that they've peaked around the very, very right time where they are the ones recording these 6-5-5 very high goal margins. And secondly, this time of the season was when last season they were experiencing injuries, and so a lot of the big guys were going off. This time round, they're actually welcoming back people from injury. Thomas Partey has started being incorporated
Yeah.
into the team. You are looking at some of the other big guys who are coming back gradually. Gabriel Jesus, who was also injured, sometimes is now picking up his pace. And you look at this, and then you are wondering, this is more like a flip of what happened last season. And it was probably the key that Ateta missed in the previous campaign that they had, where, and like you said, maybe it took them by surprise. They weren't expecting to be title contenders. All of a sudden, they find themselves there, and they need to match up to it, and now they are primed for it because I think the conditions surrounding the time they've peaked, the kind of players they have coming back, and the kind of solid backbone that they have. Because now imagine taking Declan Rice off and bringing in Thomas Partey as a replacement. That's that's solid, right? Meanwhile, last season you take Thomas Partey off and ask who are you or if he's injured, and we saw it. Anytime he was injured, it really affected Arsenal's style of play because there was no proper holding midfielder who could control and dictate the pace of the game. And I think they have backstops to the challenges now, which is helping them.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's go.
So
Yeah,
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 I
continue.
you know I was just about to say like I agree. I think they're in a much better position to challenge now, and it's
Yeah.
quite clear for me. I think there's a title race in there, and Arsenal is in it too. But they need to win against City. For me, they need to win against City.
It's this is the first time I've heard you say something positive about about
I like Arsenal as a team, but they should just know their place. That's all.
But yeah, we also saw another seismic clash in over the weekend. Liverpool Man City, a game hyped up. Beyond the Liverpool Man City, it was a Klopp versus Pep situation. Given that this is the final time in the EPL where Pep is going to be facing Klopp, at least for the short information that we have, unless maybe Pep stays for 20 more years and Klopp comes back to Liverpool. But you look at the game, and I think of course Liverpool were the favourites to win that game per the way the game went. They had more shots created. I think their shots on target were eventually the same. But if you look at the game and the control and dictation of the game, the fact that City even ended up having less possession clearly tells you City is not a team that rarely plays a game and has less possession in any match that you can think of. And so that shows you the struggles that they had. And like you were saying, anytime Haaland is forced to drop deep and form a much more solid defensive base, they struggle up front, which is what was happening. Because now, because of the threats, Haaland had to drop deep, and then they started having much more control. Liverpool started having much more control. I don't know your thoughts on the game, how it went. There was a whole controversy about McAllister being fouled and a penalty that was supposed to be given and all that. But share your thoughts on the game and also the implication on the table as to how the table is structured right now.
I just want to start right off the bat with the most controversial thing. I don't think it was a penalty. And I
Okay.
know we're in the age of VAR where like we freeze the images, and but I
Yeah.
watched it in real time and it didn't feel like a penalty because it was
Yeah.
very, very soft. Like first of all, the foot did go high, but you could
Yeah.
see hesitation with Doku whether the player was coming or not. And when he lifted his foot and realized, okay, the player is going for the ball, realized he pulled back from the challenge. So it's very easy to just take the stills, 98 minutes of the game, and say penalty. But there was no way this guy goes down from that challenge holding his tummy and rolling all over like someone gave him a
But
Shaolin.
just a thought though, whether or not he hurt him to the degree that he was exaggerating to, high foot in that situation. Obviously,
Yeah,
anywhere outside the penalty box would be a foul, and probably even not a red card, a yellow card to say the least. So why
yeah.
isn't
I
it a
mean,
penalty in the penalty box?
that's what I'm saying. Like there was barely contact. There was barely contact, and you could see it. Like you could see when the ball was landing, and it looks like who's going for it, who is not going for it. And he left his foot up, and once he saw the player, you could see him pulling back from that kind of situation.
You
I
think
don't.
if Casemiro was in this situation, he doesn't get a red?
No, no. And I think that's the thing. It shouldn't be a red. Like in some situations, you see people give reds, but it shouldn't be a red. For me, like you could see that the player was clearly also looking for that contact and also made a movement towards him. I don't think it was a penalty in that respect. Sure, maybe if it was outside the box, it makes the decision easy for the referee to give a foul, but to a
Yeah,
point where it literally changes the game. I don't think it was a penalty. But nonetheless, there is something going on in Liverpool. I don't
yeah.
know if it's the club
Klopp is
leaving
leaving.
or but look, there's some juju in that club now. There's a way. No, Klopp is an excellent leader. He's a leader of men. There's a way
Yeah,
Klopp has conditioned not just the players, but the fans. The
yeah,
fans look to him and trust him 100%. We've
yeah,
seen situations where, like we have seen Chelsea, where there's been lots of injuries and how to play certain players out of position and things like that. And the fans just aren't on board. Klopp sometimes I had to shout to the fans. Klopp sometimes I had to dismiss. Klopp once said, if you can't get behind this team, if you can't jump and scream in the stadium, give your
yeah.
ticket to someone else. He
Don't
says,
come.
only tickets, don't come. There's no coach who goes. People would kill for club, and these are not players. These are just fans. And I live in Liverpool, so I know what I'm speaking about. People cried. It was like there was
Wow.
a day of mourning in Liverpool the day Klopp announced that he was leaving. People cried. People
Yeah.
cried. It should tell you how much of a leader he is, and this is not something that you just do once. And he's going against the grain. He's doing unconventional things, and I think there is a kind of emotion that he evokes. Look,
Yeah.
Liverpool fans, maybe those on social media, I don't know, but Liverpool fans who live here don't care if they win the title or not. They don't
Yeah.
care. They don't care about the title. They don't care about winning the title. There's no pressure or demand on Klopp to win
Yeah.
any title. He could be here for the next 14 years and not win anything, and they don't care. They just want the man to live, and that's why you are seeing him pick young players, play with
Yeah.
them, and no one is complaining. No one is saying, why is Salah on the bench? You could bring no one is saying
Yeah.
a word.
Yeah.
Bringing these
Yesterday,
young,
started
yes,
Harvey Elliott ahead of
yes,
Salah against Man City.
yes. You would have, if it
My
was any other team, and as they were losing the ball, especially in the beginning where there was the flurry,
yeah,
you could
yeah,
see
yeah,
that like in other stadiums there'll be groans. People will be like, these guys
yeah.
were cheering, these guys were singing. And against Chelsea, I remember in the cup final, when they brought the kids on, they all stopped and started
Yes,
singing, and there was sort of this
yeah,
chilling,
exactly.
and that is very scary. Look, I've been in a lot of situations before where we've had to compare, and I'm not saying it's on this level, but
Yeah,
one thing that as an athlete you can't fight is when someone gets into your head.
yeah,
There's a feeling that this guy is winning and I can't do anything
yeah,
about it messes up with your head. And that's how the Man City players felt. They felt there's nothing they could do on that day which could save them. They just felt everything is going against us. And once that starts settling in your head, you start making mistakes. And that is why I feel Liverpool came in, because then now these young kids were being bold. I don't know what Klopp tells them. It's against City, and they were bombing forward,
yo.
tracking, doing everything. And I was like, this City team all of a sudden looks so ordinary. And this is
Yeah.
against.
I mean, I personally maybe have a little bit of a tactical issue with Pep with the way he set up the team, because I think maybe in the first minutes when Liverpool were panicking a bit, and then City had some control got into his head. Because if you look at essentially how Liverpool played that match, even though they set up in a back four, they were essentially playing with a back three in possession, and then pushing Bradley very, very up and very, very wide, and then forcing Harvey Elliott to tack in and creating overloads within the midfield. So eventually, City wasn't having a field day in that midfield. And this City team, anytime you shut down the midfield, the team is done. Because every other thing that comes from that team, through Bernardo Silva, through Rodri, through Kevin De Bruyne, it's done. Haaland cannot run. He can run and run and run. It won't go anywhere. He also went to play what do you call it, Alvarez, instead of a proper out and out winger. And I was wondering why that was the case, because then you ended up switching Foden to the other side, to the right side, instead of playing him on the left, and then playing Alvarez from the left instead. I'm wondering whether that's not distorting the balance of the team, because obviously Alvarez can maybe fill in for De Bruyne, but he's not that great as a wing player who is able to hug the touchline, who is able to cause troubles, take 1v1 defenders on, and all that. And so maybe eventually the setup of Klopp maybe took, I don't know, I don't want to say took Pep by surprise, but the fielded players that City had were not able to match up with the tactical superiority that Klopp was using. And that's why when they took control of the game, it felt more and more like Liverpool were going to win. If there was any team that was going to score more goals, if there was any team that was going to have more shots, more chances, Liverpool felt the more likely option. So I genuinely don't know also whether I was cautious, because one thing I was thinking about was it was actually not in any of these managers' interest to lose this game, and it
Yeah.
was also not in their interest to overwhelmingly risk to win it, right?
Yes.
Because I won't risk to lose. If I risk to win, then I open myself up more to lose the game. And if I lose, imagine for Liverpool maybe losing and falling 3 points off Arsenal or something, and then City losing and falling 5 points off Arsenal, which was too risky for them. So now they've drawn and they are still just 1 point. Liverpool is on the same points as Arsenal, and then City is just 1 point off with goal difference.
Yeah.
So maybe the draw was strategically best suited for the two teams that is involved, and probably that's how they set up eventually
Yeah,
to be that
maybe I
competitive.
think it bled a bit into the psychology because if you are
Yeah,
a City player and Anfield traditionally has been very very difficult, you're
yeah,
going to go there thinking, look, we should not lose. We just cannot lose,
yeah,
and you know
exactly.
this Liverpool side can hurt you. And I think one thing that you said that stood out for me. For me, I think Klopp is one of the best in-game managers of the game
Yeah,
in terms of adjusting because he obviously started with the back four, but he
yeah,
realized that this was the weakness within the City team and he tweaked it. And you're not even going to see him before you realize he has tweaked it
yeah.
and then
You
you're
still it
struggling.
and that's it.
Yeah, and I think you're right in terms of where Alvarez played. But I think given Doku's poor performance in the other game, it made
Yeah,
sense to start Alvarez. But obviously now with Bernardo Silva and Kevin De Bruyne, who just
yeah,
are not your typical people who are going to sit in the midfield and try and win balls, spray passes. You just had Rodri to control those balls, and for some reason he was almost non-existent in the game due to Endo. But I would say this, and just to buttress off the last point that I made, there's
yeah,
a feeling around this Liverpool team that these big teams are almost embarrassed to lose to them because that was the same thing that happened in the cup final. You are there and you feel like you are trying everything, it's not working, but you can't lose. How are we losing this? Like, because this guy is playing kids, and you almost feel like if you lose, it's going to be super, super embarrassing. And it also makes you kind of sit back a bit and gets you to be a bit more defensive. So that's why Poch even said he was playing for penalties. So I think that coupled with just the feeling that they when they lose it will be far more detrimental to the campaign. It made them play for it. But I think at the end of the day, Liverpool should have won. Diaz was phenomenal, but his finishing
yeah,
reminded me of a certain Sadio Mane um, when he was in Liverpool sometimes with some of the
yeah.
decisions that he made close to the.
No, I genuinely think, regardless of Doku's performance, Bernardo Silva is a much better wide player than Alvarez is. And if you ask me how I thought City would set up, it's eventually what he did by taking off De Bruyne and bringing on Kovacic. But I didn't think that would be the way. I thought he would set up with a midfield of Rodri, Kovacic, and De Bruyne, and put Foden and what do you call it, Bernardo
Bernardo.
Silva on the wings, and then play Haaland in front. Because Silva is a devil. That guy finds pockets in space in the channels and out on the touchline. He's equally very good with taking on defenders 1v1 because of how sneaky he is, putting in
Yeah,
place very impressive performances. If you look at, I think, Real Madrid at home last season when they played the Champions League, in during halftime, Silva just put the game to bed. And that's how dangerous it can be on the wing. So I get it that Pep sometimes can be a genius, but maybe this time around the genius part
like
didn't come
that's
out
the
well.
Alvarez was expected to play in a certain way, which I just don't think suits his game. He likes to drift into the center, and it helps because now Bradley doesn't have to worry about him, and the center backs can
Yeah,
run direct.
exactly.
But I just think
Exactly.
it was a gamble. It didn't pay off.
Yeah, it was because eventually what he did was drop Haaland deep and then start triggering the press with Alvarez instead. And
Yeah,
that wasn't as effective as you want because then the Liverpool back three could just sit and play the ball around and just find spaces within the midfield. But yeah, eventually they had a draw. I think that still keeps the interest going and it places more pressure on Arsenal because that game between Arsenal and City later on in the month is going to be season defining. And I like it for Liverpool because now whoever bleeds there, they don't care.
yeah,
Because out of this whole clash amongst the three, whoever bleeds there, they don't care. They are fine. They just and if you look at the rest of the games left, Liverpool relatively has a much more easy run at the end of
yeah.
the season.
And
And
people
so
don't say this a lot, but Liverpool has just lost twice this season.
yeah, bro, look at the team he's been playing with,
Yeah,
right? And they've had injuries, and a lot of people have speculated it's going to get tough. It's going to get tough, and it never seems to get tough, right?
yeah,
So you look at it and you're like, Liverpool seems to have a much more easy run into the end of the season, and that that result from that game would clearly tell. They just need City to lash Arsenal, and once that's done, they are good to go. Right. So yeah, I sent you a screenshot over the weekend when I saw when I saw Ten Hag play a 4-2-4-0 with 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 no striker tactically. I mean, Marcus Rashford was on the pitch, but he wasn't playing him as an out and out striker. He was partnering him with Bruno, like two false nines. I don't know what they were doing there, and I was wondering why. Why?
Yeah.
Who in this? It's so strange. A formation. When I saw it, I just decided to take a screenshot and send it to you.
Yeah, I know
What's
the
your
funny thing,
thoughts?
I was about to do same. I was about to take a screenshot and send it to you and ask like what was going on, and then I saw you had sent it to me. But I didn't watch the game. Obviously they won with two penalties, and when I did watch the highlights, it does look like Everton was just dreadful. Um which I think like typifies Man United situation, right? Like teams come, don't finish off their chances. Man
Yeah,
United are able to somehow finish their chances or find chances from deep. But like I think it underscores the frustration with Ten Hag. He's getting results to a certain degree, but it's not pretty, and
yeah,
it
it's
doesn't feel like he has a handle on things at certain points in time. But I still think that look, they need to settle on him because he's a manager who's proven that he could play very, very good stylistical football and
yeah,
gets like a structure behind him. And I think when they do, he's going to function very, very well. But they'll need to
yeah.
go through these periods.
I mean, if you look at that game, to be very honest, there's this graph that the EPL published in terms of moments in the game, and literally in the second half, United just have one moment in the game. It was dominated mainly by Everton. In the
I mean, he
first
set
half,
up a new striker, so what would you
yeah,
expect?
it was dominated by Everton. What do you call it, Everton? And I'm like, how do you set up? And I
Yeah,
think it was how do you set up?
it was sitting on sofa score as 4-2-4-0 or something.
Yeah, 4-2-4-0. How do you set
Mm.
up at home against Everton and you're playing a 4-2-4-0? Who are you scared of? Yeah, like it's. I'm wondering who are you scared of as United to force you enough to compel you to play a 4-2-4-0.
Mm,
But eventually they got two penalties, which I think it's mainly like Garnacho playing very well, trying to cause
yeah,
troubles. It's probably even more down to poor defending by Everton and the
yeah.
kind of
Everton,
defending decisions they were making. Yeah,
the kind
rather
of
than saying that it was really, really good play. Right.
yeah, the kind of defensive decisions and like the attacking play, final balls in there.
Yeah.
I think it was just one of those games. I think United is quite lucky to still be in the running for top four as of now. But looking at the way Spurs is on the ramp up, it will take like a lot for them to get there.
Yeah.
Plus they have a couple of tough fixtures still coming up. Um, so it will be good to see how it goes for them. I just hope they drop. For me, I just hope they drop.
Yeah. I mean, talking about United, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, who was probably the previous substantive coach before we had Michael Carrick, then Ralph Ragnick, and then Ten Hag. He had an interview, and I think Stick to Football. They had this podcast session where he was speaking a lot about his time at United. And there are two things that stand out, which I just wanted to pick your thoughts on. The first one was on Cristiano Ronaldo's signing, where he said at the time felt like it was a good decision. And then eventually, when Ronaldo came, I mean, in hindsight, it didn't work out for him. Ole, it didn't work out for Ronaldo as well. But he, when he was asked, said yes, he would like to get Ronaldo in. And the question here is that he was making an assessment saying that season, the season before, they had finished second behind City. And in his mind, that was the season they were setting up to come and play much more expansive, controlling football. Because the season before, they were playing this Dan James, Rashford, Martial counter attack, PPP go. So they were doing this plenty running on the football pitch, but not controlling games. And now he said he was setting up to come and expand and then compete for the title with City. That summer, they signed Varane, and then they signed Jadon Sancho, and then eventually Cristiano Ronaldo came. According to Ole, United started the season off very strong, and they were one of the best pressing teams until they signed Ronaldo, which shifted, which shifted their style of play and shifted their off the ball pressing. Right. I don't want to pass my comment yet, but first of all, what's your take on this? Because genuinely, I don't think there's a fair assessment of Ronaldo's performance in United when he came in and how Ole coached the team at that point in time.
No, like I think some of these guys, after they're done with the job and they go and stay home, they see things a bit differently, or maybe their recollection of things is it's just things in their own head. But there's always like what you intend to do and then how it appears. Like even here
Yeah,
on this podcast, sometimes what we intend to do, what we intend to say,
yeah, it's
how it
different.
appears, and we need to be
Yeah,
able to merge two sides together. But these teams tend to fall into this trap a lot. Like a typical example is West Ham. Um, very Moyes is Moyes is a very good defensive coach, good
yeah,
on a counter attack, and every season they play defensive and counter attack, and then
yeah,
gets very close to top four, then top six, gets into Europe. Then the next season they go and buy a set of players. So you remember him buying Gianluigi Scamacca,
yeah,
Paqueta, like a
yeah,
couple of players
yeah.
like for now
Could
people players who come through the door to try and play expansive, beautiful football. Then they fail. Then mid-season, he will start with his
revert back to his normal boom
playing like
boom cha.
defensive mids and like just one up top with maybe Antonio,
Yeah,
someone like that. So it takes a lot to transform your style of football. And for me, I
yeah,
think if something is not broken, don't try to fix it. And if you want to fix it, it's not just about adding one or two players. It's also about changing the philosophy. It's also about changing your training methods. And
yeah,
in periods of transition, you can't still be performing at a very optimal level. So for me, I think it will take more than just bringing in Ronaldo to get to start playing that kind of football. But yeah, I think like he perhaps maybe saw something different that we don't see as fans. But I
yeah,
just think Man United was even till now they are still a better counter attacking team than a
yeah,
team that want to like play because even I mean Ten Hag just owned it and said they want to be a counter pressing team and build from the back stuff like that. But it's still quite clear that they
yeah.
are
They were heavily transitional team.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I had two comments about that. First of
Mhm.
all, see, for Ole to tell me that from one season and after one summer and one preseason, he all of a sudden realized that they wanted to stop being a counter-attacking team and start playing expansive football, tells me with or without Ronaldo, they would have failed that season. Because you don't change a team and their style of play and philosophy by bringing in Varane and Sancho. Let's pick Sancho. Sancho was terrible throughout that season.
Yeah.
Sancho that he brought in to come and play that expansive football that he was talking about was terrible throughout the entire season. Varane was injury prone, sitting out majority of the season. And so where the same players that he used to play the counter attacking had all of a sudden transitioned into Man City robots who were coming to play controlling games, tiki taka. What exactly was he thinking? Because you don't, and that questions a lot more about his understanding of the team and his
Mm.
understanding of what it would have taken to transition the team into that kind of play that he wanted to make. Because player instructions and muscle memory and building patterns and positional play and getting comfortable with tweaking certain things doesn't come with one preseason and doesn't come with one season. So unless he was ready to say they had agreed on board level to sacrifice that season to build up and experiment and tweak things and get things right, then he shouldn't be saying that it was Ronaldo coming in that messed up their plan for playing expansive
I mean,
football.
I think about blaming it all on Ronaldo. Like, I don't know when Ronaldo came in,
Yeah,
you saw things where Ronaldo was apparently the one coaching the team, and Ole was like,
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of things which I'll come to in a bit, but you look at that, and I'm like, Ronaldo was the team's top scorer.
yeah,
Ronaldo was the team's best player that season. Ronaldo was up top scorer in the league against informed Son and I think Salah by 4 goals. A player who was 34 or 35 at the time that he arrived at United. Your main strikers, Martial was shit. Cavani was injured throughout that season, injury prone and making noise all over the place. So I sit down and I think about it and I'm like, is it difficult for players and coaches to just say, look, I messed up, I didn't assess the situation well, rather than try pinging on Cristiano Ronaldo, who, of course, the way he left United wasn't great, but that particular season in question, he wasn't the problem at United, and it was clear, right? And it tells me Ole was the biggest problem in that dressing room. If he himself
not like a
thinks
man.
that,
Why are you
who
so?
I said,
You you sound
I
like
feel like, not because I'm a Ronaldo fanatic, because I'm a
oh,
Ronaldo fan. Yeah,
oh,
I like Ronaldo a lot, and so
you said
I dislike it when people try to just play this random blame game about Ronaldo was the one who messed up United season. Like for Ole to tell me that he was expecting to all of a sudden start playing expansive football that season, just proves to me that they would have failed no matter what. They would, they would have failed and they would have dropped out
the
of top
funniest
four.
thing for me because it was so humiliating also because he was going to City, right? Ronaldo was going to City
Yeah,
because
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. Then they were like,
Exactly.
we got the deal.
Yeah, it's such an
City,
emotional club.
City was like, just have it though.
Take him, Charlie. And you look at the second thing that he was talking about was more about recruitment in the club, where he mentioned that he recommended Erling Haaland on multiple occasions. The club turned him down. He recommended Jude Bellingham. I think there were some other players that he claimed to have recommended in the past, and then they never got into the club. And I'm wondering if you're a manager, because he said he recommended him again after he was made interim manager and after he was made manager actually. And then Haaland was at Salzburg. He hadn't played any games yet. I think he went about 20 games without playing before he started playing and scoring goals. And he had a 20 million release clause and they never triggered it. And if you're a manager and you clearly have this much faith and you couldn't pull it through, then what was going on in that dressing room, right? Because if you couldn't find the reasons to say, look, this is the person we need, this is the person we want. And sure, maybe Haaland wouldn't have come because of Alfie's links to City and all that. But at least United should have put in a try, right? And if you're a manager and you couldn't pull that, then I was wondering, what was he doing in the dressing room? Because if you are recommending players and you have a strong assessment of them, and scouts are not even getting to do scout reports on that player to put them up the list or something, then what's really wrong within that dressing room as well? I don't know whether it's a much bigger reflection of the cracks in United's recruitment structure since Alex Ferguson left and the whole structure crumbling down as well.
Yeah, I mean, my first thought with this is um I think it's very, very easy when you see players thriving elsewhere to say that, oh well, I wanted to sign them, but
Yeah,
what was the reason? Because it could be that they are signed and they just don't do well, and
yeah,
everyone just forgets about it. You were like, whew, I'm glad we didn't bring him in. So I think
ma-
players will go where they need to go. Yeah, players will go where they need to go, and
yeah,
if they do well, fine. If they don't do well, that's fine. Like you just have no business with it. But of course, there are some generational talents that you wish they were in your team, and you wish that you had a chance to be able to like work with them and get them to play for you. The second thing is that there are some players who getting them it's not like so some of these brightest young players getting them is hard, not in the
yeah. Very,
sense that they are very expensive, but
their
clubs
demands.
yeah, clubs need to be skillful at being able to negotiate these deals. And there are
Yeah,
clubs which are set up to negotiate complex deals. Like Real Madrid is a club that is set up to negotiate complex deals.
yeah,
They know how
very,
to do it.
yeah,
So you will not see them go for it. Like Chelsea doesn't know how to know. Our most complex deal was Havertz when everyone was chasing him, and our strategy is always go and get him before the others come in. There are some teams once they get into a bidding war, they
They
are
will,
already. And
yeah,
Man United is one of them. If there's a hot kid on the block and Man United wants
they
them,
always will.
it's complicated, and it seems that their hierarchy, especially around that time, has like just like a bad track record of
Yeah.
doing that. It's not quite easy to just suggest. It's very easy to suggest players and then walk away from it, but there are a lot of extenuating circumstances. Like Bellingham,
Yeah.
once he's been hot, you see, once some players are hot, they associate them with some clubs like Real Madrid, Liverpool.
Even Bellingham. Bellingham in Ole's interview, he said Bellingham came to the what do you call it? The Theatre of Dreams, came to the stadium,
Yeah,
came to Old Trafford, saw Alex Ferguson, Michael Owen, saw a lot of huge players
yeah,
around, and just made specific demands and said, look, if I'm signing for you, I need certain minutes in my first season assured. And that's what the club wouldn't give him. And then he
yeah,
went to Dortmund. And from
yeah.
Dortmund, he's gone to Real Madrid. And I have a feeling that sometimes we think that maybe if these players stayed in United, they would have turned out to be the players that they are.
Yeah.
Actually, they would have turned out shit. Like, which bright talent haven't we seen at United recently, and how have they turned out? Very, very poorly. Marcus
Yeah,
Rashford, when he burst onto the scene, and Anthony Martial were hot cakes. These guys started running around, scoring goals in derby matches, scoring against very, very big teams on their debuts and all that. And all of a sudden, bad structure, bad coaching, poor performance. It has eaten their careers away. Today, Martial is deadwood without any reasonable impact on football. Even though when he burst on the scene, he was one of the brightest in his position and
Ballon
his
d'Or.
talent.
You know, there's a Ballon d'Or clause in his contract
Yes,
where
Christ, goodness me. Look at this. Look at this.
there's a Ballon
Look
d'Or
at this.
clause in his
I'm doing
contract.
that.
That if you
Only
win the
shouldn't like only shouldn't make it seem like if Haaland was to come to United and he would still be scoring 50 goals a season. Maybe he
yeah,
wouldn't,
he wouldn't.
right?
He
Yeah.
wouldn't. Anyway,
Yeah. So now let's talk about your favorite club, Chelsea Football Club.
not my favorite club, my club.
I'm coming to shade them so you can take it and hold it and rub it on your chest. I don't care. But you sat here on this podcast in the first episode of the Beer Parlour and told me Chelsea had a better midfield than Liverpool. Chelsea were going to win by 2 goals to 1.
Are you speaking like countryman Songo?
Club's kids did you guys dirty. Oh, but to be fair, that game, Chelsea had really, really good chances. I felt you guys were unlucky in the first 90 minutes, like in full time, in actual full time of the game. What got me angry was the decision to just step up the gas when the extra time started. Because I was like, what the hell was going on? Because Chelsea was actually dominating, creating chances, pushing on, pushing on, pushing on. And Liverpool's defense, they were tired. It was Van Dijk, it was the kids who, when you were mounting pressure on them, especially on that stage, they really didn't know how to react to it. And so they were conceding a lot of chances. But when they were on the ball, they were a lot more comfortable because Van Dijk was at the back doing this choir orchestra thing, directing pass to this person is free, dropping deep, you can step
Yeah.
in field now. And then Liverpool goes on the break. All of a sudden, you guys come back from for extra time, and Chelsea started sitting in deep. It was so stark a difference. I was unsure what to call you guys. And so when Gary Neville said you guys are $1 billion bottle jobs, it was like facts. Because there's no way, there's no other description of that 30 minutes extra time performance from Chelsea. After 90 minutes, if there was a team anyone was tipping to go win that title, it was Chelsea from the performance that was put in there. And so to think that all of a sudden the legs had vanished, nobody was running, nobody was pressing, nobody was creating chances anymore, and leading up to that Van Dijk goal was crazy. And that's what has led to this whole club kids getting boosted immune systems and confidence through the roofs. And all of a sudden, these guys are dribbling as if they are prime Messi's under club emotions, bursting in goals and all that. See the performance these kids put up against City. All because they did it against Chelsea. That's all. That's the only reason why
No,
they.
I mean it's there's a reason they did it against Chelsea. It's not if you know, like within the season, he's introduced like a lot of new guys, like players like Jarrell Kwanzaa, Conor Bradley.
Yeah,
They came in, were doing quite well. Like Bobby Clark was featured sometimes. Like I mean, Javier Lot is almost he's people forget he's 21. So these are kids who know the club through and through, who have been brought up in the club system, and they understand, like the club is understanding, the fans understand that these are their own players and these are their own kids. So I don't think if they've never done it before, they would have been able to do it on that day against Chelsea. And I think since then they've not even since then they've been doing it consistently throughout the season, especially most of their major players off. They did it against City and no one is, I mean, like City feels slightly embarrassed, like with oil money and
yeah, of course.
not being able to overcome this Liverpool side. And but like I said, I think this Liverpool side is special, not because like they are the greatest team on earth, but the level of belief that Klopp is able to put in these players. Like
Yeah,
Klopp is a manager, he doesn't feel any pressure, no pressure at all. No pressure. So players play with that kind of feeling also that there's no pressure at all. And I think it was
yeah.
the opposite for Chelsea because now it felt like a trophy that they
Pressure,
needed to win,
lots of pressure.
and and it felt like a trophy that they needed to win, and I think yeah, you're right. Like it started putting a lot of pressure. And look, this Chelsea team, I was telling you the other time, some of them have not even completed a season long of football before, 21-year-olds. So it's very easy to say that, yeah, you were bought for this price. So this expectation needs to be there. And that's the difference between them and other 21-year-olds like Harvey Elliott, who he was got
Yeah,
for free from the academy. And I think typically we were let down by the very poor finishing, like the problems which already have
yeah,
plagued the season, and the whole narrative around this being the uh, Todd Boyley first trophy of the whole
yeah.
campaign, things like that, and that brings immense pressure, and they couldn't deal with it. That's all. I don't think it's a matter of their footballing ability. I think
Well, look,
at that
yeah.
point they were a bit conservative with the way they handled the game.
To be fair, their footballing abilities, I mean, like I said, in full 90 minutes, they were clearly showing that Chelsea was the superior side. I think you mentioned a comment the day where we recorded the first episode where you said this wasn't Anfield. And I think what changed also in extra time was the fans turning the place into Anfield.
Yeah.
Literally, they got up, started singing, the noise, cheering on the team, and making sure that the support was being felt. And all of a sudden, you could feel the pendulum swing in favor of Liverpool. And then
Yeah.
they took the chance from the set piece, and then they took the trophy away. But recently, there've been some trends about Pochettino out. Since it's your club, do you think it's time for to open the door for him?
No, I think what I want to focus more on is this whole narrative around Tuchel coming back. I think
Yeah.
I've been seeing the watch out trends. You know, the funny thing, this week they are comparing the Zerbi, saying, and then the Zerbi got trashed 4-1, 4-0 at home, and everyone kept quiet. Oh,
Yeah.
they're like
Bayern is
Ruben.
now they are comparing Tuchel.
Yeah, they brought Ruben Amorim. And then, like, I think, I don't know, I think he had either a poor performance or something of that sort. And people were like,
Yeah.
there's the whole articles around now Tuchel is out and people are like romanticizing. I made a tweet this morning. I was like, who, which coach hasn't Chelsea fans called for his head before? Now, even Jesus Christ, they killed him, not John the Baptist.
Even Tuchel himself, at some
Even
point,
Tuchel
people
himself,
himself. Yeah.
even before he was sacked, there were points where this fan base was split. People were like, "It's time. He needs to go. He needs to go." Then once he went, everyone was like, "Oh my darling Tuchel."
Yeah, exactly.
Hypocrite. Hypocrites. For me, these are all hypocrites. Make it look like, and they are part of what's the problem at Chelsea. I'm always make a note on our Chelsea. I was like, Chelsea in Kukrafono does too much. People
Yeah.
who just don't like change, who don't want change, who have
Yeah.
no appreciation of the reality, and they all want to act like motivational speakers, Brian Tracy. No excuses. Get the job done. Get the job done. No excuses. It's crazy. It's ridiculous. Like they're
Yeah.
running their own business and their CEOs, and I know I don't want
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
hear about anything. Just win. Just win.
Oh,
It's crazy for it doesn't make any sense. Like I think Poch makes a lot of excuses, but the excuses are valid. Like you can't look at it and tell me it's not true. And I agree that there are some managers, if you put them in this situation, they can make better of it.
yeah.
But how many of them are there? They are not
Oh,
available. If you
you know
think if
what I
Klopp
was
was available and you wanted to coach Chelsea, I will not say that get him in. So you can't say
saying? Yeah.
Poch out or get him out. Who do we bring in? That's not my job to think about. It has always not been your job, and we are here.
You
So don't
know
don't tell me
what
those
I
things.
was thinking, that the same thing we're saying about Ole's flaw in thinking that he could transform a team's style of play in just a preseason experience. It's similar to people's lack of patience, and I think managers and clubs who are able to grind out fun displeasure are the ones that eventually build generational teams. And the classic template for this is Arsenal. How many? Because the first season, Arsenal was poor when Arteta went there. The second season, they missed out on top four very, very narrowly, and it was so painful for them. And then all of a sudden, they are flying on top of the table. But what we saw, regardless of whether or not they were on top of the table, was a clear identity of the team, clear cohesion, clear style of play that Atete had the time to build and put together with Edu in Arsenal. And then they were now seeing the patterns and the kind of trajectory that the team was going on. And now we see them as a team, and we are so happy and we are praising Atete. But in his first season, every single person, if they were to cast a vote, Atete out would have been 105%.
He
People would
lost
have
10,
booted him out. Is it?
he lost 10 in a row.
Yeah, exactly. Like
10 in a
he
row.
his performances were terrible. Beyond that, he was falling out with some of the greats at the club at the time. Aubameyang and some of these people who were leaders within the dressing room who he wanted out. He was demanding certain standards. They weren't giving it to him and he wanted out and all that. How many people didn't say he would regret the decision of letting Aubameyang go and falling out with him and all that? He wasn't a good coach.
Mm.
And now everybody has forgotten that. But during that period, if the club has succumbed to it, Arsenal wouldn't be where they are. And it's similar to Poch, it's similar to where United is. These teams need to learn that you need to give a coach time to reorient and evolve a team. And
I
that
think
evolution comes with experiences like you say.
I think the problem is who do you give the time to? Because it's very easy to say give it time, but time alone doesn't solve it. So I think the
Yeah,
most important thing is to start looking at the underlying factors. Me, I was Potter out, and I will proudly sit on business and sack Potter because one, there were a lot of things which were off about. I think one was off the back of the Tuchel thing,
yeah,
and yeah, that's no objective, so I'll let it go. But our underlying figures was constantly showing that even when we were winning, we were overperforming, and the team was
yeah,
in terrible shape, and he just had no grip on the issues. And with a lack of track record behind him, he made it very, very difficult. So me, it's not like Poch is my most favorite manager. Like Poch is a manager that we used to like ridicule, Butler, things like that. But he's also a coach that builds teams. He built
yeah,
Southampton. He built Tottenham. We need to be built before we can win titles. We can go off the bat, buy players, and then win titles again. But clearly, that's not the model that these guys want to follow. So he's a coach that builds me. The way I see it, coach might not even win anything in 3 seasons, but I think in 3 seasons he'll get the team very, very ready. And before
yeah,
you realize, there is an elite manager out there who
yeah,
probably just take hold of this thing, just like with because people forget that before Tuchel came in, we had a transfer ban. Like Mauricio
yeah,
Sarri
yeah,
got
yeah.
us go us playing some kind of football. Some players like Jorginho, stuff like that, in go a transfer ban. Lampard
Lampard
believed in
came in.
brought them in. So now there was a mix of these experience and then youth who are just coming, and then
That's when
Poch
to pick them. Yeah.
pick them up. And so there needs to be a process. We
Even
can't
City didn't just all of a sudden pick up from Pep.
do
City was having some good
Manchester.
season. Yeah, Mancini, good seasons there, building the squad gradually, and then Pep comes to pick them up and then starts to do wonders with
Yes.
them.
So me, I think even Poch is the kind of coach who will get you to finals, win you one or two trophies. There's no way Poch finishes 3 years, his 3 year contract or his 2 year contract, and then like he doesn't win a
Yeah,
trophy. It's not
keeping
possible.
insane.
So I think we need to be patient. Just speaking on the Tuchel thing, because I think maybe there'll be a time where we go into some of these options. It's very,
Yeah,
very easy to romanticize these things coming back, but we need to remember the reasons why Tuchel was sacked. He was not willing to be a project manager. He was
yeah,
not um, willing to jump on board just having youth, right? And
yeah,
we need to remember that when he came in and he won as the Champions League, we had an interview where he spoke, and one of the things that he said was that we asked how was he able to settle in so quickly. He said, "No, when I came in, there was a lot of experience within the squad, and Lampard was letting them sit down, saying the youth."
yeah,
Show sacked all the young players to go and sit down. People forget this. Brought back
yeah,
Aspili the lineup, brought Thiago Silva back into the lineup, brought Jorginho back into the lineup because Jorginho was on his way out, brought Rudiger
yeah,
back into the lineup.
yeah,
All
yeah,
these old players who were out. And he says they are the experienced people, they can take instructions and they can run with it. You don't need to talk plenty to them. He
yeah.
likes ability. Like
He's the
Brian,
elite players coach.
yes, Brian, when he went there, brought Muller back into the lineup. Matisse Tell, who is like one of the most brilliant, exciting talents. The guy is good. Is consistently on the bench. Nabry is on the bench. Like
Yeah,
Coleman, always in the hospital, so that's fine. But he relies a lot on an experience. When he comes in, he will not use half of the squad for anything. He will
that's true.
demand new strikers, everything, and that changes the entire structure, especially after spending £1 billion. So we if we want to win now, we need experience, and
Yeah,
clearly we can't buy that in. Then we need to build it. And for me, I think that in itself is a worthy investment. These players love Poch, and Poch is a builder. So for me, we trust him. Yeah, we don't win a few seasons. And people are affected more by trolling on social media.
yeah,
Me, I'm tuned up. Like I go on pages, people want to troll, and sometimes I engage in the banter. But I realize that it doesn't make any sense to be doing these things when you know that your team is on a good trajectory. And we might actually be the ones who need to go out because we are tanking this team. When we go out, then we are booing at the players. Their
yeah,
confidence begins to drop. They begin to lose sight of the fact that like they are there for the long term, and the demands
yeah,
on them begin to raise, and they start making mistakes, and then they cannot take the coach's instructions. We need to back the coach, give him a chance, and when we back him and he still doesn't do the job at the end of the season, we can start doing our assessment. But we are in no position to negotiate because Luis Enrique was offered the job and he refused. Nagelsmann went into negotiations and he refused. The reason
backed
is
out. Yeah,
yes, there are no options in the market right now for Chelsea to go cherry picking. Because you say
yeah.
this is a project you are doing, then you sack two managers. Who would want to come back and sit behind this job because they know
Set
that
the project back. Most likely, you'd have to restart with a new manager
yes.
and new
So there are
ideas.
times where you just suck it up. Like Arsenal fans, they were making noise all over the place, but there's a point they just suck it up and they were like, look, if this result is not going to make them sack out Ateta, I don't know. I'm just going to support them. I'm just going to follow Saka or someone like
Yeah,
that did. And today it's paying out for them. We need to
yeah.
come on. Everybody's on board now. It's only the fans who are not yet coming on board. We need to do better.
I mean, this is your club. For me, I think that Pochettino is a good manager, but I currently do not see a world in which modern day elite football isn't heavily short term result oriented. And usually you'd always say there are some things that would give you a breathing space. We talk about Arteta all the time, but I think he won a trophy in his first season or so, which gave him the fans something to cheer about, rally around, and make some noise about. And Poch, if he had won this final against Liverpool, would have given the fans something to cheer up, and then he would have had the breathing space to work on his project. But now he didn't win, they've made this all noise about clubs kids. Gary Neville said they're a bunch of billion-dollar bottle bottle jobs, bottle jobs, and then all of a sudden there's
Because when
pressure back.
when United lost woefully against Man
Yeah,
City, they were toyed with this same Man City that you saw how clubs
yeah,
boys.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
He was like, oh, it felt like a game City would always win, and it felt like they were not disgraceful. They were disgraceful, and he will not say that. He should leave there. All of these guys are the problem because when they keep on highlighting Poch hasn't won anything and blah 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 blah,
Yeah,
because people forget how much the media also controls opinions and sways
yeah,
opinions. I
a
think
lot.
has not done itself a world of good. There was a time I saw an article out there and fans were being enraged with it. And I actually went to go and listen to the interview, and it really wasn't what Poch was saying. Like he was saying something really different, and his words were twisted because there's already a notion out there, and they continue to feed it and they continue to feed it.
Yeah,
Someone says he should now stop giving interviews. Like, what was he supposed to say with the press conferences? Come there, they ask him the same questions.
the
Oh, how
same
much
things over
injuries?
and over and over again.
And then he'll say, yes, injuries have. What is he supposed to say? Oh, the injuries haven't break their season. We have half of the squad out there in the hospital, but no, it hasn't affected me at all. And he keeps on saying that, look, yes, injuries obviously have affected, but we need to find a way and move forward. We cannot let that be an excuse. But no one remembers that part. And we are
Yeah,
being engineered and we are just like following. And now, even if you go out there and even this interview, if people listen, they'll come for me because you support coaching. The people are
finally.
good.
Yeah, finally. Marcus Rashford's had an interview with Players Tribune. Came out with some quotes and some speeches around people questioning his identity, his commitment to United, and all that. I really don't give particular attention to the details of whatever he said, but there was a conversation, and this thing has been bugging me. There was a conversation around the timing of his interview, and there's this notion out there that if you are a sportsman, if you are not getting good results, don't speak about your frustrations. And so people said, oh, yeah, it would have been great if he was on form. He was in form and then he granted this interview. But he's not in form, he's not playing, so he shouldn't grant this interview and he shouldn't be speaking about the way in which people are just judging him and bastardizing him. And I'm wondering, is that really a fair requirement on sportsmen? Because we are the same people who come and say, look, these guys are equally humans. They are not robots. Their mental health is important. The ability to express things that keep them down is important. And they get affected in one way or another by some of these things that emotionally drain them and mentally kick them down. Why do we need to place a performance timeline on when somebody is able to vent out frustrations that are actively breaking them down piece by piece within their daily experiences? I don't know whether it's a sensible thing within the sporting arena. And for me, I think it's time we just stop placing timelines on people's ability to talk about some of these bad experiences that they have.
Yeah, like even for I mean, like when we started the Shafts podcast, we sort of saw more that people were a bit more open after they had left the space. Because
Yeah,
I think there's some wisdom to it that how you speak and act whilst you are in the sport affects how you are seen and you are judged tomorrow. But I also do think that players need to have the freedom to be able to say what they want to say. Like Dele Ali came out quite recently and spoke about the level of abuse that he was facing. You
yeah,
just and the things that he had been through, and you just wonder how someone like lives
yeah,
these things. But I feel like it affects the way you are judged. Some people don't speak about things because they don't want to be perceived in a certain way. And I think it's up to you and how you want to be seen. But I think these are some of the most important times where they need to speak. If you are doing well, what do you have to speak about? Your message is almost the same. And you
yeah,
almost are more reflective when things are not going well. So I think he's right to start speaking out for himself because this is it. This is the time. This is the time when you are done with the sport and you are gone. No one remembers. People have
yeah,
moved on, and like I was saying, fans are very, very, very fickle. Fans will say anything, but go back to their daily lives. But this is your life. You can't escape from it, and you
yeah,
just have to constantly. And And I'll just use this opportunity to say that like the level of abuse which is leveled at some of these players is nauseating. And if you're a
Yeah.
fan, yeah, like I mean, I get it. We all throw, make some jokes and things like that, but we also have a responsibility to make sure that we think of them as humans and as people who also go through these situations and not rid ourselves of the empathy.
Yeah, I mean, for me generally, I when I heard those comments, because Rio Ferdinand, for instance, said, "Oh, it's a bad time for him." Rio personally, when he was playing, if he's not doing well, he shuts up. If he's doing well, then he start talking. I'm like, yeah, that doesn't make any sense. You don't put a timeline. What if his form, he never regains his form? Is that a line to bottle up every single negative experience that he's having in there? And of course, we pay them to put up performances, but in the end, they can't escape being human. They can't escape the emotional and mental reaction that they go through to some of the things that are said about them. And if you listen to the interview, he's made very life defining decisions around commitment to Manchester United. And so for people to question his commitment to the club
Yes.
was one thing that hurt him to the core. He didn't really mind about you chastising and analyzing his every hand through or whatever it is, but it was about the conclusions of it that if he throws his hand, it's not that he's playing poor, is that he's no more committed to the club, was one that really hurt him because he had made life changing decisions around his commitment to United. And people should be able to express those disappointments in some of the comments that are put out there
Yeah.
about them, so that at least mentally they are free within that space. Yeah, this has been an amazing episode talking through a lot of things from Arsenal through to Liverpool, Man City, down the way to on the low United with the strangest formation I've seen in my life, a 4-2-4-0, uh, down to Erasmus's dying club, which is in the grasp for air and resurgence and false nostalgia around Tuchel, down to the mentality of players and why they should be allowed to speak up in their most traumatizing moments, regardless of their performances. This has been a really amazing episode. Erasmus, I hope you enjoyed the discussion.
Up the Chelsea.
This up the Chelsea was the same thing you said before before
Yeah, we are
clubs
playing tonight.
give you
And then
City.
if we lose again, then probably I'll stop speaking about Chelsea because maybe that's the jinx.
If you lose again, I'll just come back with more truths. This time around, I'm going to analyze you guys and come back with more truths about your play. But
Yeah,
yeah, it
just
was it was a really amazing episode.
yeah, just to say there's no expectation for tonight. Like people are just man, like
Yeah,
look, the season.
it's the hope that kills, Chile. So at some
Yeah.
point, you just have to stop hoping. Stop hoping. Now, when you die, you deaf. But yeah, thanks everyone for joining in on this episode of the Beer Parlor. We'll see you on the next one with some much more interesting discussions. Hopefully, we hope to have some detailed conversations around Klopp's legacy, his likely replacements, and some much more juicy conversations around the English Premier League. See you on the next one.